Welcome to Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet. Join Janet and her friends as they gather at the intersection of consciousness and self-experience, what being consciousness in human form is all about. Access heart-centered awareness with them and feel the difference in the moment that will last a lifetime.
Hello, and welcome to Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet. I'm your guide, Janet Barrett. This podcast is all about appreciating being alive. And to appreciate being alive means recognizing that at our cores we are the intangible, as essence, soul, spirit, expressing is self, the human. Collectively, we are the consciousness. For this next hour or so, we look to relax the judgment that is so necessary to what we call self in daily life and relax in our truth of the intangible. We explore how each one of us is part of the whole of humanity and all we find on this planet and in the cosmos. It all makes up the core of consciousness. We are the intersections of the non-physical and physical realms of being. When we live in awareness of spirit inside our humanity, we are embracing energies or senses that are the expanded vibrational bandwidth of our everyday physical senses of touch, sight, smell, time, and space. We embrace our knowing, our cognizant, that which is beyond knowledge, as just as important in experiencing life. We are all in connection. There is no separateness. Our episode this time is Remembering Our Intuitive Magic with my guest, Ilarion Merculieff. Ilarion is the Unangan, which are the Aleutians, Indian Tribe Elder and founder of the Wisdom Weavers of the World, an Indigenous Elders community of over 80 different tribe elders from around the world. I would call him a shaman of heart. He and I will explore what it is like to live with the magic present. It is our reality state enhancer. It is all about heart. As children, we all knew and sensed that the world was a magical place. As we age, we have often forgotten this magic. Is this where our now destructive sense of separateness is coming from? I wonder. We are going to share in the magic again that lives in us as we explore being in heart. Both he and I embrace that our physical senses extend into a broader vibrational range, and at that level, as intuitive senses, they are vital to enriched living and what we know as oneness. We include experiencing time and space and consciousness as senses. When you live life this way, you appreciate and respect life and this planet and its inhabitants differently than if you don't. Let's start with how you feel about magic or miracle in your life. They're pretty much the same energy. They're just coming from different references. Some don't trust in magic. I think a lot of us want magic in our lives if I go by the books I see in the marketplace these days. Lots of magic, paranormal, fantasy series, and authors keeping busy. We perhaps are trying to escape what daily life seems to have become. Some books will embrace magic with just lightness, and many with both lightness and darkness, reflecting our ambivalence that we can hold about magic. It becomes a duel, not a dance between black and white forces. We have them exist in a state of duality. They don't have to. There is only magic and its use. So let's take a moment to just relax and be open to what happens when one becomes present in heart-centered awareness. Breathe through your heart. Just let. There. Now, be with whatever comes into your awareness when I mention magic. Notice. My sense present is that it feels like something hidden away from many. You may be up in your attic or down in a basement, or maybe the space around you is filled with a different kind of alive energy. Notice the lock, if there is one, on the box labeled magic. Let it open. Check to see what is present and if it is as fresh and vital as the last time you saw it, or dusty and forgotten. Or you may have an item that represents magic sitting out in the open. What do you feel? Continue to relax and be present. None of us are too old for magic. It is in each of us waiting to be enjoyed. Magician, alchemist, sage, and shamans are everywhere. Magic is not just sleight of hand and bound to white and black forces. It is the quality of the unexpected and unexplained. It is witnessing something outside our current frame of reference. It might call it miracle energy. It is the appreciation of our expanded intuitive realms of our physical senses and of malleable time and space. It is experiencing life without bias as a child does. It is the innocence present to enjoying the wow of what is being witnessed. Laughter is magic. A smile is magic. Sunrises and sunsets are magic. Music is magic as well as tickles. Babies are magic, as cavorting animals are too. Feeling a purr, the scent of good food. Old people are magic. It is bubbles touching our nose. It is awareness of the little people sitting under a leaf.
In the light of love, we are home. In the light of love.
Our Indigenous families bring vital awareness to our sense of magic. They unite us in our approaches to enriched living upon this earth. They share with us their awareness of consciousness, spirit, and life, and the relations of healing our illusions of separateness within ourselves, with others, and this unique planet and beyond form. Ilarion Merculieff represents his people as elder of the Unangan of the Merculieff Islands, 300 miles off the coast of Alaska and the Bering Sea. He was raised in the traditional Unangan, which are the Aleut way, and received his name, Kulyak. This name is given to one person in each lifetime amongst his people. It means an arm extending out from the body, a carrier of ancient knowledge into modern times, a messenger. Today he is the living legacy of his name. This legacy has kept him very busy. He has spent over 50 years representing his people and culture in their home state of Alaska. His voice has been heard in over at least 8 different positions of government on several levels for years in Alaska, representing her native peoples. He has worked with an often adversarial government and even had to win the right for his people to feed themselves. Ilarion's heart has led him to develop his positions involved with marine life and the life of Mother Earth. He is more than qualified to speak on climate change and snow change. His is a strong voice and activism, calling for the meaningful application of traditional knowledge and wisdom obtained from elders both in Alaska and indigenous cultures throughout the world, and dealing with modern-day challenges. His present work is with a new organization he has founded called the Wisdom Weavers of the World to take the messages of the elders to global attention. He says that boating, fishing, and work are his passion, so they are not work, but his joy, and his joy to share with meeting people. He is a spiritual man who listens and speaks in truth and walks in beauty. It is my delight and honor to be with him as we explore the intuitive magic of being and heart. Hello, Ilarion. Thank you for joining me.
Unangan, hello, how are you?
Oh, right. Hello, my other self. I'm sorry. I need to get into my space. I'm so glad you're with me. I have been looking forward to this so much. When on our other episode at the end of it, you mentioned something about magic. My ears and being, my whole being lit up. And so I knew we had to go that place with this. And so we want to talk about how life is a magical experience, and how this world is a magical place, and how maybe we've kind of forgotten that as we've gotten kind of set in our ways and directed away from our inner voice that understands all these things. So let's just take a moment, make sure that we're all pretty present here, and check in with the field. And so everyone, just breathe. Easy, effortless. Breathe into the heart. Just feel all that connect. Let go. Let just enough. You don't have to let all of it go. Let just enough so that you can be with Ilarion and the depth of his being and awareness of life and whatever my 2 cents are worth. And just notice about being present, where there is no story, there is no separation, there is no qualification, there's no edit, and down the line. Just let it go. And notice what that feels like. So we're going to talk about magic. So Ilarion, what are you noticing in this moment?
Well, it's good to be in the present moment and in one's heart, and to talk with people who are of like mind and heart.
And that's where our subject is coming out of, isn't it? Our heart.
Oh, yes, it's absolutely, totally beautiful. And, once you get there, you wonder why you ever left it.
And then you remember, I left this somewhere, and then you can feel that.
Yep, that's so true.
That's true. So when we're talking about magic in your context, what is that encompassing? Give us some navigation here. What are we talking about?
Well, you remember in the last conversation, we talked about the 2-year-old child as the model for our culture.
Right.
Yep. And the 2-year-old child, the reason that the 2-year-old child is our model is because they don't have the things that adults have for protection. And they're just open-hearted. And when you're open-hearted like that, you know that magic exists.
Everyone, just notice that. So go awaken the 2-year-old you've got in there, and we're going to go on for a ride here. So, with no limits, with no dictates, just notice, and let's see where we go. Okay, please continue. Ooh, sounds good. Are you there? Did we have some magic happen? What might you say, Ilarion?
Well, laughter is magic.
Yes, it is.
Yep. And all the things that the 2-year-old child does, like play, and the way we play is magic. I don't remember ever being bored as a child.
That's an incredible statement, probably.
These days, certainly is.
Did you have... Oh, okay. So definitely in today's society with our games and connections and cell phones and stuff, people can experience a real sense of separation from the mechanic, from where they see magic coming from. And you're bringing us back to the awareness that the magic is within, and really about innocence. To me, I celebrate innocence. I don't think any of us are not innocents. I think what we've done is we've gained experience that says we're not. And the truth is, it's just experience. If you can appreciate a smile, if you can appreciate the sunset, if you can appreciate a handhold, you've got innocence operating. How's your viewpoint about that? Are you there, Ilarion?
Yeah.
Are you going deep or not hearing me?
Oh, I was just waiting for you. I didn't know that you were asking me a question.
I guess I do put it out there for all of us. Okay, Ilarion, what do you notice about innocence?
Well, innocence is totally being amazed at everything in life. So, you remember when we were children, we would just see a bug and we'd stare at the bug and contemplate it, and we'd stare at leaves or trees, or, we just get really into focusing on the miracle, really, but we don't think of it at that time, but we do focus on these things, and we study it, we play with it, we feel it, we do everything that we can with it. And that's probably why I was never bored as a child, because I was fascinated with everything.
You were engaged with what you found around you.
Yep, and the elders call this the real human being, and it's not to elevate us any more than anybody else, but the real human being has the qualities of the 2-year-old child. So they have gone through their own lives, let's say an adult, real human being, and they have worked through all the things that have covered us up and disconnected us. And it's really hard work because you have to go through your shadow selves in order to get there. And you have to understand the work that's required to go through all the trials and tribulations we had in our lifetimes, or that we've learned. And I mean, you have to really re-experience them and process them and let them go. And so that's what it takes to be in the heart and to be a real human being. So the real human being, for example, is one who is not in thought all the time, and that is in the heart, present in the moment. And when you're in your thoughts, you're in the past or the future, but never present moment.
Right.
And so that's a requirement. And when you go through all of these things that you have to do to get there, you have worked through the hardest part, and it's very hard for most people to get to that point, because it requires real courage to get there.
So you're describing the magical mystery tour.
Yeah.
You know, and it's how you frame it all, and what being an authentic human is, and how magic comes out of this state, because you're not running on assumptions or presumptions or everything. You're allowing yourself to be open to what might be possible without you knowing how it showed up. Exactly. And I think that's my definition of magic. And so for a lot of people in Western culture, perhaps, we have this white magic, black magic, things trying to fool us, et cetera, et cetera. And we're talking about a state of being, an awareness, a sense that there are things we can know, there are things we don't know. We invite the exchange without the resistance of having to control it. Isn't that kind of what being a whole human is about?
Exactly. And, I can tell you about some of my experiences that would be considered magical. And
Ooh. All right. Everybody check in. See how you resonate to the idea, the word, the state of magic. What are your references? And just keep breathing and just notice how our willingness to be present is in this field. and this is why you're listening. So please tell us more, Ilarion. Give us some of those examples of magic in your life.
I'll give you some physical examples, like when I first encountered seabirds. I mean, the Pribilof Islands, where I was born and raised, we had at that time about 2.5 million seabirds on an island that's 12 miles long and 5 miles wide.
Okay, so there was bird poop everywhere, is what you're saying.
Okay. And they're all at the periphery of the island, so there's intensity of wildlife.
Wow.
And, you know, because the adults treated me like any other person, only inexperienced with safety and all that, the only time they'd interfere with me is when a child is in danger somehow and they don't know. And so when I was 6 years old, I would go 3 miles out of the village and 3 miles back, and I would go in complete darkness. And as a real human being, we're taught that, you know, we feel our way through. And so we trust our bodies to know what they're doing. And so I would walk, you know, in the Pribilof Islands, there's no sun. There are 20 days of sunshine a year. And so there's frequently no sun, no stars, etc. And so I would walk in pitch black because we don't have any street lights.
Oh.
And 3 miles out of the village. Then you go to the bird cliffs, and that means crossing very large basalt boulders. And so I would do that. I would just trust my body and I would go. And so I would be underneath the bird cliffs before sunrise, because at sunrise the birds start rustling and waking up from their sleep on the cliffs. And I loved seabirds, and because they're so alive. And so I wanted to experience that. So I would go underneath the bird cliffs practically every weekend. And when I first got out there, I was just amazed, because when the birds woke up, they would be forming circles of their species in front of the bird cliffs, and because they're waiting to collect members of the species before they go out foraging. And they would fly within inches of me. They would be oblivious to, or maybe they were aware of me and they didn't. They wasn't there.
Yeah. You weren't a threat.
Yeah, and they would just fly within inches of me, and I loved that. But then one day I was looking at the birds, and they were going in every which direction in apparent chaos. They would be moving diagonally left, diagonally right, to the horizontally right and left, up, down, different speeds. And they would be landing and taking off the cliff ledges. And there would be like, well, I estimated maybe about at least 10,000 seabirds underneath this cliff. We had, 2.5 million seabirds that concentrated on the cliffs around the island. That's very intense. And so underneath one cliff might be 10,000 seabirds of all kinds of species, thick-billed murres and common murres and least auklets and crested auklets, tufted puffins, horned puffins, fulmars, cormorants, thick-billed or red-legged kittiwake, black-legged kittiwake. There would be all kinds of species, and they'd fly at different speeds and different heights. And with maybe 10,000 seabirds in front of this cliff, I noticed something that I thought was magical. And that is the birds never, in all their apparent chaos, never clipped a wing. They never got to a situation they accidentally hit someone, or some bird. And they never clipped a wing. And so I thought, wow, what's the difference between seabirds and me? I was 6 years old. And I thought, well, they don't think. And so I said, I want to be a bird. And so I focused on not thinking for a couple of months until I got to that point where I didn't think anymore for hours. And I can still do that today.
Wow.
And I didn't have the words for it at the time, but they're just a field of awareness. And that field tells them how to navigate, and they're in communication with each other. And so I didn't realize how wonderful and amazing about what I learned until I went out. I had a traditional mentor called an Acha. We call each other Achas. And my Achas started taking me out at 5 years old, hunting and fishing. And when we hunt for stellar sea lions, which are not like the California sea lions. They're much bigger. And then we always hunt from shore to water, not on a boat, because it's too rough out there for us to use these boats that we have. And so we would wait along the shoreline on basalt boulders for a sea lion to come. And usually there are about 5 or 6 hunters there. And I would be there as, a kid. and I would just watch and listen and learn. And we would sometimes be out there all day. We'd get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, have breakfast, and get out there before daylight because the ducks are flying at daybreak. And then we wait for sea lions. And we might wait for an entire day, like to 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, for one sea lion to come by. And now for a 6-year-old kid, I would just fall asleep. I mean, at 5 and 6 years old, I would just get daydreamy or sleepy, or I'd fall asleep. But the men never did. And I thought that was magical, because they didn't talk very much, because that would distract them from knowing whether or not a sea lion is there. And they would sit and not move very much. And they would just be quiet. And to be quiet for 7-8 hours, I mean, that's a challenge, or I thought at the time. And so that I thought was magical for the men not to get sleepy at all. They would be just totally alert, waiting for the sea lion to come, and not very active or vocal. And then pretty soon someone and the hunters would say, "Kawakako, sea lion coming." And instantly all the men in the hunting party would look at the same place in the water. Now, mind you, we're in a island, and so we had 180 degrees of water, and the sea lion could be anywhere, but the hunters instantly looked at one spot in the water. And I looked and didn't see a sea lion, and finally, maybe about 10 minutes later, the sea lion would pop up exactly where they were looking. And I thought, wow, that is magic. Well, then when the sea lion does come by and the men shoot, they shoot within microseconds of each other, because of our understanding that we must minimize any kind of suffering. And if you're in your head and thinking about when to time your shot to the lead hunter, you're 1 or 2 seconds off. But these hunters were exactly shooting almost simultaneously, because what happens is the sea lion moves fast, and so after the first shot, it starts to dive. a second or two later would hit the back.
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be tremendous suffering. So they were synchronized in a way that I thought was magical. And then I made a connection between the seabirds and the hunters. The hunters learned what I learned from the seabirds. And, no one ever told me these stories up to that point in time. I nenever heard about, being like a seabird. But the hunters so I decided, well, I'm going to just be like the seabirds when I'm out hunting from now on. And so I did that, and lo and behold, that's when the magic happened. I didn't get sleepy ever again, or daydreamy, and I could feel the lead hunter, and when that lead hunter was going to shoot. And I could feel the sea lion before it came. So I knew exactly where it was going to be. And all these things are considered, a myth or something like that, but it's really not. I'm talking from personal experience about what happened to me. And that's how I learned that the hunters and seabirds were really connected. That's just one example of many other things I have to say.
Okay, so you bring up so much of things we could pay attention to. So, in noticing everyone, you can feel the depth of Ilarion's oral tradition, because he can track it 10,000 years of his story. And you can feel how he is present into his remembrance. And this is something that is really magically oriented. You can hear how he's addressing perspective. He chooses in his awareness of connection to be able to sense what isn't yet present, like tracking the sea lion, and how all the hunters knew in some way the same place to focus on long before it showed up, right? He's describing certainly proprioception systems, and how birds work together and move without interference, but he's talking about also about how they weave through one another. So not only watching the flock in the beauty of the dance as they cross the sky, it's about where they're launching themselves from in order to be that flock of flight. So he's got lots of different references that may not be yours, but he's also asking us to remember our magical experiences as a child. He embodies them as present. And my question is, are we? So allow yourself in this letting of being present to remember and activate again into this reality of being in this moment, those times when something magical happened and someone else said it wasn't. He is fortunate that he had a community that understood his perceptions and didn't talk him out of it. So just notice, because this is going lots of places here in order for magic to be appearing. And magic really, for me, Ilarion, is something outside of my reference. When something happens and I can't track it, when I can't figure it out, and it can be the sleight of hand kind of things. And it's also just where the focus goes. And I always thought it was interesting when professional magicians, for instance, do the cups, the 3 cups and the balls in the cups. And when the cups are clear, and you can see the ball,
people predicted where the ball would be, and it was not in that cup. And that for me was about how our perceptions and our mindsets tangle us up into what we perceive as reality, when even when you could see it, they couldn't get to it. I thought that was very interesting about magic. So, what do you notice? Ilarion.
Yeah.
I think we have a magical Skype connection here. Well, we're probably just tracking way far away. All right, Ilarion, listen up.
Okay.
Okay. So, all right. So continue. What else is magical? Now that's a child. You bring that awareness into the adult. Yeah. So how does it show up in your adult experience?
Before I get there, I'd like to just talk a little bit more about these experiences.
Oh, okay.
So we traditionally fish for halibut for subsistence purposes. We use hook, line, and sinker. We don't use a rod. And because the hook, line, and sinker, you can bring the halibut up very quickly. Whereas the rod, you might take a half an hour to bring up an average size halibut. Well, in our day, we were picking up 5 foot, 4 foot, and 5 foot halibut weighing, 85 to 100 pounds. And so we would just use hook, line, and sinker. And I started applying when I was 6 years old. I started, my dad or my archer would take me out fishing, and we would use a 16-foot kicker or a 10 horsepower kicker on a 16-foot boat. And we'd get out there and we'd start fishing. And I applied what I learned from the seabirds to fishing. And what I would do is I could feel the halibut when it's around the line before it hits the line.
Okay. Got
it. And I could tell you what its behavior is when it starts to examine the bait. So, for example, there's a lateral line in the halibut that on the white side that goes from top to bottom. That's a sensory organ. And so I can tell you if it's moving over the hook with its lateral line. I can tell you if it's testing the bait by sucking in and out in microseconds. And I can tell you when I finally do hook it, what size halibut it is. And
so you're telling me you're in the Bering Sea in a boat shooting in a barrel, fish in a barrel.
Yeah, that's right. It's in the Bering Sea. And,
oh my goodness.
And then I can tell you whether or not it's male or female, because we take males only, not females. And so it's important to know between male and female. And I used to wonder how the fishermen did that. And this is how they did it. They were like the seabird. And so I can tell you whether or not it's a 3-foot halibut, 4-foot halibut, 5-foot halibut. I can tell you if it's hooked by the lip or the jaw or the side of the body. I can tell you how it's going to fight on the way up. All these things are essential components of a good hunter and fisherman. You have to have that ability. And if you don't, you're much more successful. And I was considered a very successful fisherman. And these qualities I consider to be feminine qualities, because it's receptive, it's nurturing, it's waiting, all these things that is attributed to the feminine side, the sacred feminine. Mm-hmm. And no hunter or fisherman that I knew that was good they would have these qualities, none of them who were unsuccessful had these qualities. And so we learned very quickly about the sacred feminine just by experiencing what the seabirds did.
It all comes down to terns and seagulls. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, the seagulls. That reminds me. That reminds me. As a child, we would live next to where a bunch of seagulls would flock every morning, and so I learned their language, and that before I even look out the window, I can tell you, for example, if it's a unusually good day with lots of snow on the ground and it's calm weather and no wind, and so I would know from these what seagulls were saying whether or not it's going to be a good day for sledding. And when I hear those words or the language of the seagulls, I would just get up and eat breakfast very quickly and go out for the whole day and night sledding.
Okay, so you are expressing a dynamic that was allowed to flourish in you, and you're experiencing the unseen, and you're being able to read the vibrations and the resonances of what is going on around you. So like you're this major tuning fork, it feels like. And I know in our listeners that there are so many people that have the sensitivity that you're describing about connecting with life in different forms, and whether it be slugs or whether it be the tree or whether it be the rock over there, they hold within their field of awareness of sensitivity turned towards resonating with what's around them. And in just noticing everyone, all those times that you noticed something, you had a response and you didn't know what to do with it, so you put it away. And in being authentic and being awakened means reorganizing your experience that's already in there into new order. How to experience again, fresh, anew about being. It's already in us, and some of us, just depending upon our biases and our perceptions and what we think we know, can be quite comfortable being rigid, because then we don't have to think and engage. And this is a time in man where we need to engage, we need to connect, we need to question. And you do all of that, you start within ourselves. Because everything out there is just a reflection of inner here. So if you find yourself in a day-to-day space where hard is hard and soft is vulnerable, and we don't want to be vulnerable, then you're in a certain mindset. If you're in a mindset that allows you to experience hard and soft without the judgments of either and or the state of, you're in a much easier place to notice when things get a little fuzzy. So just be aware. Be supportive. This is all in love. This is love of self, of being able to feel and track information. Ilarion is brought up in this culture where it is all about being present and being able to listen in a way that goes much deeper than most of us are familiar with. So, what are you noticing right now, Ilarion?
Well, I think, first of all, what you say is very, very true. And I like the fact that, I can talk with someone that does have an understanding of this. And so it's being brought up in a culture that knows that there are things beyond our physical being, that if we use the entire intelligence of the real human being, the all of our five senses, our gut feel, our intuition, our heart sense, they, if you allow them to operate, not the brain, just everything that can be present in the moment, yeah, then you will be able to see things that, or feel things that that today we consider normal. We've abnormalized the normal, where we think that these senses are independent of each other, and the mind is the primary place of operation, and so we miss the boat. But when you realize that it's your entire makeup that allows you to see things, including magic. I mean, when we're little kids and we grow older, we had the tooth fairy. We believed in the tooth fairy and Santa Claus and these kinds of things. But that's because we know magic as children. Right. And then eventually these things, we think that they turn out to be lies by adults. And then we say, okay, I'm going to be in the mind from here on out, plus all the other things that allows you to be in the mind. From the get-go, when you're a little child, you're taught to, be in the mind, and from the top down, and that there is a top and there's a down. And if you're a child, you're the down, and the adult is the top. And so you listen to the adult tell you what to learn, how to learn, define everything. And so we accept that, and so we become schooled in not understanding that magic exists. Now, let me tell you, okay, given that an entire village that I come from, knowing these things, we tell stories about things that happen all the time that would be considered magical. So, for example, we have a story about the Unangan, which means like man, and it's the Yeti, it's the Bigfoot, and so we have our own version. But we didn't have outside contact, and so why do our people know we know the Unangan exists? And
And well, so, you don't have any trees and you don't have any bushes for him to hide in, and he must swim in your version.
That's right. And so in those days, there was a little hut that didn't have any windows. It was all broken down, didn't have any windows, and there were bird nests up in the ledge of the inside the building. And so I was there with my sister and my best friend. We were looking in amazement at the chicks that were in the nest. And then my sister was behind us, and she let out this most blood-curdling scream. And we didn't think twice. We just all ran out of the building. And then when my sister finally calmed down, we were like 5, 6 years old. Finally calmed her down. She said, I saw a thing that was all hairy. She said it was a hairy thing outside looking at us from the open window. And so we knew that was Unangan. Then my daughter, as much older, I was an adult then, my daughter went out hiking on the road, and she came back and she told us about seeing the Unangan. And she actually saw it. Then the last thing about that is that there was this elderly man that was walking on the beach, and all of a sudden he saw this creature being walk out of the seawater onto shore, and he got so scared that he ran back to the village and told the local priest, and they that he gave him holy water, thinking that maybe he's seen the devil. But the islanders knew that that was the Tie of Nod. Now, I'll tell you something related to that. They also tell stories about portals.
Okay.
And that the island has a portal, and they're always on tops of these hills. We don't have any mountains. We don't have any trees. And so they're on top of these hills, and the highest hill is 600 feet high. And the elders would talk about how people would disappear at certain times in these places. It was the only experience I ever had about portals until I was an adult, and I was invited by a tribe in Canada, in eastern Canada, along with 3 other people, because at the request of their elders, they contacted us and invited us to come because the elders were telling them it's time to open up our portal that had been closed for many years, and these people will help us open up this portal, and we need it because it's the place where we talk to our ancestors and our star ancestors. And so, well, I didn't know why I was picked. I didn't have anything to do with portals, but they knew. And so we got there, and we did cleansing ceremonies in the morning and evening, every morning and evening for 4 days. And during the day, we would talk. And then at the 4th day, we went with the entire village. There were about 100 people, all wearing traditional dress. They were in buckskin. And we walked up a mountain. And it was quite a ways away from where we parked. And so we got to the top of the mountain. In the mountain was a lake, and in the middle of the mountain. And so we started our ceremonies, and Don Alejandro, who was the keeper of the day calendar from the Mayans, was there. 4 people invited, and he let out this wolf call. Now he was known as the One Wolf, and so we looked at that, and as soon as he let out this wolf call, a real wolf calls out to us directly across the lake, looking directly at us. And I thought, wow, that's really neat. And then it started thunder and lightning, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. The thunder and lightning came so close that it vibrated our bodies. And I thought, whoa, this is really something. And then an unearthly sound of an animal, just was gnarly sound, came from at the end of the lake. And the chief, who was standing next to me, leans over and says, "Sasquatch." Okay. And then it finally rained, but it was raining directly over the people only. It was not raining anywhere else. I could literally walk outside from where the people were and look back at them and see rain going on the people and nowhere else. And the elders knew that they succeeded, or we succeeded, in opening up the portal. And my job was to teach them how to keep the portal clean, which I did know how to do. And so that was another kind of magical moment. I've had many like that.
Oh, wow. Okay. There is so much we can articulate in that. So just notice, everyone. So some of the thoughts running through this, Ilarion, are about how we relate to magic, and some of what you described had held the energy that we don't like to be fooled, because it's about trust. And when you're coming from a shaky trust security position, don't fool me, right? And so we have that tinges how we might interact with magic as a way of experiencing life. Who dictates when we watch the magician do his thing and we can't figure it out. He is outside. He's presenting something unknown. And when we have the thrill of, oh, look at that, and I don't have any idea how he did it, that's a different state than even knowing how it's done and still being thrilled, right? And then you've got your awareness of how in a culture, what the culture holds as its tradition story conditions the space to allow for things to happen. And whether it's a Sasquatch, which you bring up is really interesting, as he appears in lots of different cultures, never really been seen, been explored certainly. The idea that it's connected in a portal realm, like, whoa, well, of course, that makes total sense. He shows up when he wants to show up just to tantalize us, and there he goes. I don't know anything more about spirit than that. That's so often my experience with spirit. And then you're introducing, where is it? Okay, this is where I wanted to go. In listeners, stuff has happened that you could not explain in the moment. All of us have these experiences. Now, Ilarion has a collection of them because he's totally in that space. I have experience of synchronicity, which I think is magical. Everywhere in my life, stuff shows up, that's just, that's in alignment. That's exactly where I'm at. So magic has different ways, and whether it's the things that we're going to ascribe to alien life forms and Area 51 and whatever it is, those things we could not explain, even on examination, can't be explained. So we give some quasi explanation and deny it. What you talked about earlier, going back to the child who's taking in information of being from a parent, and how that works down the line, and whether there's an allowance for how much you're in your truth. Because children get told lies all the time from our parents, and that affects our field of trust. It affects, and nobody wants to be foolish, when really being foolish is really being out of the norm, and we're encoding it in a useful sense of being as opposed to crazy, weird discredit. What do you think about that, Ilarion?
Again, I sound like a broken record. That's absolutely true.
Oh, this is magical. I love it. The synchronicity. Oh, you're just...
Well, that wasn't the finish of the story. So,
oh, goodness. Okay, go for it.
So we finished and went down the mountain and went to, I was with the chief and went to his truck, and we started driving out. And then I saw something just totally amazed me. And that were like thousands of animals were converging on the very place that we'd just been at. I mean, predator and prey, bears and deer, snakes, all kinds of birds, and they were all converging on this place. And I looked at the chief and was, stunned at the sight, and he could see that I was wondering what was happening. And he said, well, the birds and the animals are all going to this place because they know they're no longer respected by the humans on this earth. And so that's where they went. And so that changed my view of understanding where animals go.
Uh-huh.
And it's very true that the reason you can't find evidence of Sasquatch is because they live in these portals. And so you don't find their body remains here on this Mother Earth.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I have a lot more stories, and maybe I'll tell one more.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So I would hate to end this now. So, do you have a story that we kind of encapsulates your experience of being in the world and the magic that's possible? Okay, let's go for that one.
It's a simple story where I was invited by a medicine man in the lower 48 to go out to the desert, and it hadn't rained there for nine years.
No.
And so he did this dance, what I thought was the stereotypical rain dance. And he danced for several hours, and then the rain came. And so I asked him, "What were you praying for rain?" And he said, "No, I was giving thanks for the rain." And so that is a difference between the Western world and the indigenous world, is that indigenous people don't think about taking as the first thing that they do. They think about expressing their gratefulness and thanks for what they receive. And that shows you, I mean, we pray to like a Santa Claus God, we say, "Please give me this, give me that, to help my friend who's sick and dying," and all of these things about taking. But the indigenous people say, this philosophy of taking is an illusion. And so when you just give thanks, that's all you do. When you pray, you give thanks. And that this is what, for those in the Christian faith, that Jesus meant when he said faith can move mountains. This is the kind of faith he's talking about. It's a faith that is engendered in every molecule of your body, not your brain. And that it has already been provided. And so we give thanks for that and really fully understand it. If we go to our head and pray from the head, it has doubts, it has all these things that are driven by ego, but the entire human being is not driven that way. And so I tell people about that story. We give thanks for what we have.
So that too brings quite a in the field up, lots of things lit up. And let me see, what's prevalent most in consciousness technologies, the kind of work that I do in being present, is where we change states of awareness that we're holding. So a pattern, some complaint, some issue, some challenge is a pattern. It's got a construct to it. And you can, in the moment of being present, recognize it and allow it to be different. And this is always coming across magically, because we have no reference too much of something being able to change in the moment. And I consider where your stories of your experience are as truthful and as honest and as authentic as mine in being with another person who has a headache. I either put my hands on them or I just observe them and the headache goes away. It happens in the moment. It's just that quick. I am accessing a field of awareness where that has no story to it, has no connection, and it releases. And I do it, we see it all the time in my work. And so what we're looking at is all the different ways, no matter our tradition. We just have to appreciate that in our bias, in our perspective, we have a setup in how we relate to the totality that is really, truly present. And you can do it in observing animals flocking. We sit in the backyard and we do my groups, and something shows up always. I mean, I can never say that it doesn't. That is in that synchronistic moment appropriate. And it's allowing ourselves to be open to information in how it can be experienced. We might see something, we might feel something, we have a thought, we have, I see the newspaper and a headline sticks out, or it's the newspaper itself. Whatever it is, in being open to information being available, you will experience a reframing of how you think you are in your world. And that's magical. I think that's something we all want to do. All right, Mr. Ilarion, we're about time here. So
Okay.
Anything closing you'd like to offer?
Well, we could talk for days.
Yes, we could.
Yeah. But
All right.
I would say everything has a purpose. And
Okay.
if you are open and in your heart, the true purpose of why we are here as human beings comes clear.
Mm-hmm.
And we are the only species on Mother Earth that has forgotten what their niche is.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle to get back to that niche.
All right. So we're going to make that a little easier. We do that on this podcast. Is that bringing awareness is in the moment, everyone, and each one of you listening, no matter what time and place, future, past, present, it doesn't really matter. You're having this time with us. This time is never ending. And when you open up to that, then all you have to do is just breathe. Connect to your heart. And just notice what today, do it in little steps. It's always nice, big shows. Those are wonderful. And then what happens is you go in shock and you deny and you do all that stuff. So look for the little things in your life that could probably fall under the category of, I wasn't expecting that. And sometimes that's all it takes. Thank you, Ilarion.
Oh, thank you, and thank your listeners.
Thank you very, very much for bringing magic into play. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
In the light of love, we are home. In the light of
At Ilarion's website, www.gcill.org, which is the Global Center for Indigenous Leadership and Lifeways, you'll find wonderful information about the real human being that he mentions in our conversation, plus articles of the sacred male and female and walking in beauty. He has provided the following quote for us. When we were children, there was no difficulty knowing that magic exists because we saw it in everything. As we got older, we were taught that magic doesn't exist in the way we thought, and so we don't see the real magic that surrounds us every day. Those who protected the child within or got back to that child see what others cannot. Ilarion recommended checking out www.wisdomweavers.world, where you can find out how you can be part of the community, and on Facebook at Wisdom Weavers of the World.
In the light of love, we are home. In the light of love.
Our quotes this time are from Goodreads.com. Magic exists. Who can doubt it when there are rainbows and wildflowers, the music of the wind and the silence of the stars? Anyone who has loved has been touched by magic. It is such a simple and such an extraordinary part of the lives we live. Nora Roberts. And this one from W.B. Yeats. The world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper. And any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Arthur C. Clarke, Profiles of the Future, an Inquiry into the Limits of the Possible. And I like this one also. I do believe in an everyday sort of magic, the inexplicable connectedness we sometimes experience with places, people, works of art, and the like. The eerie appropriateness of moments of synchronicity, the whispered voice, the hidden presence, when we think we're alone. Charles de Lint. All kinds of ways to notice being present in magic. My blog, Remembering the Magic in Life, is available on my website, www.janetandbeyond.com, on the blog page. Our meditation selection this time is Walking in Beauty from Tom's extensive meditation archive and interlude, an internet retreat.
Walking in Beauty. A traditional Navajo prayer is, as I walk, the universe is walking with me. In beauty it walks before me. In beauty it walks behind me. In beauty it walks below me. In beauty it walks above me. Beauty is on every side. As I walk with beauty. Take that as a starting place and consider the following. How do you see the world? Is it full of ugliness or is it full of beauty? A stunningly beautiful sunset was pointed out to a troubled young man some years ago, and his response was, "If you've seen one sunset, you've seen them all." It was a remarkable statement, not just in its utter falseness, but in that it revealed how cut off from the outer world this young person was. He was incapable of walking in beauty. It surrounded him, but he could not see it. How like that young man are we, though? How well do we experience the beauty around us? As we rush from one obligation to another, do we attend to the beauty of our world? What would it be like to walk in beauty all the time? What would be required of us? When we walk in beauty, we are connected. The universe walks with us. We are in our place, and we are aware of the beauty around us. Our eye may be caught by the beautiful flower, but we must direct our attention to it to recognize its beauty. So there is an exchange between the beautiful and the witness to the beauty. It's said, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We must be awake to recognize beauty. We must have our eyes open to the world to see its beauty. A recognition of beauty is an act of love. When our hearts are open to love, the world is more beautiful. When we are overcome by hate, all we see is ugliness. When the world looks beautiful to us, it's a sign that we are in a harmonious relationship with the universe. Let us then prepare ourselves to walk in beauty. Where there is disharmony, let us create harmony. Where there is falsehood, let us bear truth. Where there is imperfection, let us bring wholeness. Where there is cluttered complexity, let us draw out simplicity. Where there is dishonesty, let us act of integrity. Let us cultivate beauty in our surroundings. Let us bring forth the beauty in our minds. May we open to the beauty in our hearts. May we perceive beauty in our souls.
Ilarion's own website is www.janetandbeyond.com. GCILL.org. It's the Global Center for Indigenous Leadership and Lifeways, but he says he doesn't check it very often. He recommended that the best way to reach him is through www.wisdomweavers.world. There is much about the wonderful elders, all who are shamans and healers, and their appreciations of what we consider special as magic and what is the norm to them. You can also find them on Facebook at Wisdom Weavers of the World. Thank you for joining me here at Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet. You can continue to join us every 2 weeks here on the CTR network. You can post any questions or comments there or email me directly at janetandbeyondpodcast.com. For more information about all the elements that make up each episode, they are on my podcast page at my website, www.janetandbeyond.com. You will also find information there about my other podcast show, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and about my work with clients. You can sign up to receive my regular weekly blog, Life in the Beyond, Journeys into Enlightenment. You will also find out about the Fuzzy Photons playground groups I offer. Live interactive space via Zoom video conferencing on your favorite device on Thursdays. If you're looking for other regular opportunities to sit in heart-centered awareness with others and explore life, you will find it here. You can follow each episode of this podcast series on my YouTube channel, Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Till the next time, feel the difference in this moment. It is real, and it can last a lifetime.